Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sustainability and Artisan Craft Show. I'm your host, Amber Christian, and today I am pleased to welcome Steve, the CEO of Tomorrow's Artist, to the show. So, welcome, Steve, and why don't you go ahead and share some more information about Tomorrow's Artist?
Hello, Amber. Thanks for having me today. So I appreciate the opportunity to share our journey with you. A little bit of background on the company and myself. Um, the company is headquartered in Laguna Beach, California.
Mhm.
Um, the the vision for what we've developed here was inspired here in town, and Laguna Beach is truly known as an art colony,
Mhm.
globally. So we've got a tremendous uh, community of artists that live here and that show here. So for a good 70 years, we've had a great art festival, craft festival that's gone on called the Sawdust Festival. And then, of course, we had the Pageant of the Masters, which is a really fantastic, globally recognized event where we model, world-class pieces of art and shows in kind of more of a theatrical environment. So there's just a lot of creative people in this town. And living here, I'm around it all day long. So my background is in product design, and I've in that 30-year journey, I've been exposed to different kinds of products and different channels to to do my thing. And oftentimes, I'm looking at solving problems while we're developing product. So it would
Mhm.
be looking at different ingredients we can use to make something more sustainable. And this goes back into the late 90s. So we were trying to mitigate petroleum-based mold releases in my product business, the tooling business, where we were doing big concrete castings and stuff. So I've always had an eye on this channel, and um, was exposed to a supply chain out of California that was comprised of discarded house paint. This goes
Hmm.
back about 10 years ago.
Mhm.
So at that time, I was using it to create some batch designs in concrete. I was trying to consume this disposed material in concrete, non-structural products, and we were, trying different batch designs and stuff. And I was walking in the village here, my little town, with my wife, and I'm walking by gallery after gallery after gallery, and I had just gotten back from our Sacramento facility where I was doing some work on the batch design, and I had seen very high end acrylics coming into the waste stream, being just dumped in big batches of just commoditized paint, to do other things with, um, and try to prevent it from being disposed of, but it wasn't being really utilized in a fashion I thought it could be.
Mhm.
I have an idea. So um, I got a bunch of my friends in town, artists at different levels, some that are doing the, fine art and are gallery quality artists, some crafters, different types of artists. And I said, hey, I'm going to try something. You want to, do this with me? And we started to test product. So I would batch up small batches and I would give it to them and I would get feedback. And this is over 6 years ago now. So um, I was very intentional on saying, look, I think it's a cool idea, but what I
Mhm.
need you to do for me is tell me what you don't like. Tell
Mhm.
me where we can improve things. And if I can, I will, and we'll try it again. So that went on for 2.5 years. So for 2.5 years, we were bouncing recipes back and forth. And I found there were just different needs for different categories of artists.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about those early days.
Yeah.
So you're reaching out to these first artists, and you have this idea of using this recycled paint. Did you start with a product that was already recycled, or were you starting with just like a bucket of paint? Like, tell me more about that very,
Well,
very beginning.
it's a great question. So, in our process, what makes us unique is that one, there's a tremendous volume of material we're dealing with. So, we're talking
Hmm.
about not thousands of gallons of material that are coming in, we're talking millions. So, there's
Mm.
70 million gallons nationally that are being discarded. And let's say we have visibility to 30 or 40 million gallons in different areas that we operate. So that allows us to start sorting by color and base in enough volume that I can then, if I need if I targeted a palette, like a plein air palette, which is pretty much what we lean into,
Hmm.
I was able to separate out that material by those qualities, color and base, in
Okay.
enough volume to start developing ours. So when I tested product, it wasn't, hey, that looked like a nice color for the artist. That wasn't what we did. We consolidated a bunch of material and then tented, created almost a base material, and then tented to hit a palette that I could replicate over and over and over again.
Oh, so everything goes into that same base material first and then gets tinted to the different colors.
Correct. It's leaning into the color. So imagine having a
Okay.
range, and then I take the range and then we adjust it accordingly. That way I can create consistent batch to batch, and we have enough material to satisfy demand.
Mm-hmm. And so for those first ones, did you just have people work with that base material before you did much tinting, or how far did you get down the path of creating this before you had them start to kind of test it out so you could learn?
Internally, we matched a palette that was currently being marketed in schools. So we looked at a palette that was being sold, that artists were favored anyway when it came to painting, you know, landscapes and things of that nature, but had enough of the close enough to some of the primaries, even though we're not pure because we're
Hmm.
all this color combined. Artists can work with it in a fashion they were used to, with some nuances to create the colors that they wanted. So it was less like a new medium. It was, and people will ask, what do you compare to? And I said, we really are a new medium. We have the
Hmm.
characteristics of the acrylics you're used to, but we definitely have, we're nuanced a little bit because of the base and the way we do
Mm.
the colors. But we started with 15, knowing that was what it was going to take to appeal to most educators and artists that wanted to use it, muralists, for example, and then they could mix colors off of those 15.
Hmm.
It's kind of how
Okay.
this works. Yeah.
Okay. So now that initial stream that comes in that gets recycled, you talked about the 70 million gallons. So let's go into that a little further. Where does that come from? Like, what are the sources of it? Like, what does the processing look like for all of this stuff? That I'm infinitely curious about. How does this show up to you
Yeah.
when you start to work with it?
Well, I'll even go a step earlier than that in the lineage, kind of how it gets us. So I would ask you right now in your garage or wherever you are, and do you have leftover paint in the
Oh
closet
yeah.
or in your garage? Okay,
Uh-huh.
that's the origin of our material. So in most communities and in 13 states currently in the U.S., they are subsidized collection days through a group called Paint Care. So
Okay.
it's a legislative thing. So certain states say, you know what, we're going to invest in the marketing of a collection process.
Hmm.
And then in those states, when you buy paint, so if you go to a local retailer, whether a brand retailer, so that's the paint company brand, or a big box, they will have a tax on the collection. So you'll see like a recovery fee on the bottom of the receipt of X
Hmm.
number of dollars or cents for the recovery. That funds a very aggressive effort to let the community know that if you've got paint in the garage and not using it, get it to us. And you can drop it at no charge to the stores where you bought it, or you can go to a specific day where waste management will facilitate picking those things up. And they're amazing to see. Cars will line up for miles sometimes to get into this turnabout where they're dropping off 10 to 20, 30 gallons of material. And that's when the sorting starts. So right out of the trunk, it starts to go, okay, that's oil, this is water, right? So it starts to separate out into different pallets. Everything that's water based in, for us directly, all of California, Texas, a couple other states, that material ends up in the facility we're connected to. And then from there, we start sorting out color and different, we're looking for different characteristics as we start sorting. That becomes our base material. And then before we go any further, once we develop the large batches, we do a toxicology analysis of the material. And that's how we were able to get our AP cert. So when we
Um,
go through all that toxicology stuff early, so then we can
mhm.
invest in that product to get the quality of the color and the viscosity and the other things that the artists are looking for from there.
Okay.
So we
So
screen
what does that toxicity screen like what's it looking for?
lead
Okay.
primarily. Yeah, things like
Okay.
that. Just things, and there's different. All of the waterborne materials that artists are using that are acrylics and anything really. They're doing things to them to give it shelf life, things like that. There
Mm.
are very normalized limits which you can work under. We make sure we're there at baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the flexibility to adjust it accordingly. So the key for us is to make sure we're working with a healthy base, that it's come from the waste stream so that we're solving that problem. And then we start to modify the chemistry then to satisfy the artist. If we don't start with the health of the material on the front end, it doesn't really matter how beautiful it is. So we start there.
Mm-hmm. And so you have it available, you said in 15 colors. So your initial setup is 15 colors, and then people can mix and kind of
That's right.
create their own colors from there.
Yeah.
Now, what has the process been like of trying to launch this? Because you're already in a space where there are a lot of very, very established players. What you're doing is really pretty different. How have you had to think about, in the early stages, how you're going to go to market with this product and who you target, and like where are you on that journey? If you would share some more about that.
I will. It's a great time to even ask a question because we're currently doing the testing on all that. We're doing media testing. You'll see us in our social network, on our Instagram and things of that nature. We really are testing what is driving people into acquisition, right? So we're doing all the typical business stuff that
Mm-hmm.
validates a product or a brand, and we're learning a lot. So that's an ongoing process for us. I think I kind of tipped my hat earlier when I said that we really are a unique product. So when I'm looking at a competitive in a retail environment, let's say we're fighting for shelf space. For me, it's like I have nothing to really say negative about the product I'm competing with because they're
Mm-hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Golden's amazing. These brands out there, they're just amazing products. We're just different, and we serve a different purpose. So we have a different mission altogether. So compliments to the legacy brands that have done such a good job of serving the artist. We're new, and we appreciate the opportunity. But our mission is just a little unique in that when we've got creators that are doing murals, doing fine art, and doing these things, every ounce that they use and consume in their studio or in a mural or whatever they have craft, whatever they happen to be doing, they're benefiting the planet we live in, right? They're pulling
Mm-hmm.
that material from the waste stream, and we think it's a very important mission. And I mentioned earlier about kind of this, we've targeted this as kind of the tip of the spear, with the Tomorrow's Artist brand being internally owned by us and
Mm-hmm.
supported. But we also have, garnered the attention of some legacy brands that are collaborating with us.
Mm.
So, when you look at a Deco Earth product that is promoted in the craft market by Deco Art,
Mm-hmm.
that's a fantastic company, amazing people. We create base products so they can then manufacture on top of our sustainable base. So 70% of their chemistry is stuff we provide them. That's a huge impact,
Mm.
a positive impact on the environment because they're taking that out of the waste stream and placing it in a craft appropriate product. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great quality product. It's testing really well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
So, how long has Tomorrow's Artist paint been available on the market for people to even purchase?
it's been we've been test marketing for 4 years,
Okay.
and this is very specific kind of focus stuff. Testing was for packaging and
Mm.
all of that. So we made a big shift about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, in our packaging concepts because the feedback we were getting with buying groups or with just when we did a focus group on the conversation, everyone loved they loved the mission, they loved the product, so the quality was there. And then they were like, but the packaging is like everybody else. And that's this huge conundrum, right? And I
Yep.
couldn't deny it. I was like, yeah, you're right. So we scrapped a whole packaging plan midstream, pivoted
Mm.
into aluminum tins, aluminum jars on the whole line. So both our standard body and heavy body products have a recyclable container that we want you to reuse over and over again. But if you can't use it, it is part of a proven recyclable stream. So
Mm.
a significant percentage of aluminum that is sold in whatever form is generally brought back into the consumer with zero degradation of quality.
Mm-hmm.
Plastics don't work that way. Plastics
Right.
degrade when they turn, and if they make the recycling at all. Even
Right.
when the intention is there, it is very difficult infrastructure at this point, but aluminum's proven. And so
Mm,
we said we're not going to compromise our mission by settling on packaging that's it's convenient. And undeniably, the plastic is familiar and it's
mhm,
convenient. All of those things a teacher loves because they can, out of a tube, they can lay out for 10 students on it. That's a nice convenience. But if you want to make a significant difference in the way we're doing things, you're just gonna have to pull it out with a palette knife. But guess what?
mhm.
You can recycle the container, and all of our packing materials, all paper recyclable and made from recycled product. So mission consistent all the way through.
Which takes a lot of time, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
not you're developing a new product and you're like, well, each component of it to truly honor the mission around sustainability then is going to have to either be recyclable, reusable, et cetera. And that takes a lot of time and careful thought and design process, right? And
hmm
it's not like you can just necessarily grab something existing off the shelf. You might have to hunt around a little bit because it's different in order to honor the mission.
correct. Yeah, yeah. Kind of non-compromising. It takes some effort.
Well, clearly you're non-compromising. This has taken years to get
Yeah,
out of it. Like, nope, one little step at a time. This is not, it's not the, hey, I have an idea. I want to make recycled paint and we do it tomorrow.
right.
No, but it's been years in the making in order to get to this stage. So, what would you tell an artist that's thinking about trying this about things for them to think about, or any observations about how the product may be same or different than things they've worked with before? Are there any lessons that you've been learning along the way about how the product is or isn't really different than anything else?
We're not hearing dramatic contrasting conversations like, oh, it's
Mm,
behaving so differently over here. They're pretty similar because remember the origin of the products are similar. And
mhm,
when the art community adopted acrylics 40 plus years ago, the brand I mentioned earlier really advocated for that change because they saw they were so far ahead of everybody else in it. I think they were
mhm,
really looking at it from a great perspective. They worked hard to integrate existing technologies and chemistry into building the characteristics in, from the viscosity to the drawing and the
mhm,
finish. But at the end of the day, the recipes are not all that, right?
mhm,
So you're dealing with a liquid acrylic material with some
mhm,
different things in it to give it different, shelf lives and things of that nature. So the key is to stay within the parameters that the industry has told us they'll accept, to
mhm,
use the chemistry that's available to us all, and then develop product that artists will appreciate. One of the contrasting things would be a heavy body for us is a little different feeling than
mhm,
a real heavy body. So there are just some different nuances, but when somebody uses our product, they'll understand kind of where they can operate with it. Now, the good news is a lot of the mediums that are out there, and we're looking at creating some of our own out of the waste stream. Will when you're talking about changing the viscosity of those products on the fly in the studio, we're looking at that. We work with them all now because remember the base chemistry is similar to a degree. So I would be looking for that out of us in the upcoming years as far as adding product to the line. We're going to be careful how we do it, but we should
mhm.
be able to get an artist product from our collection that they're very familiar with.
Mhm. And as Handmade Seller, when I was commissioning this article that came out of this, and so anybody who's coming across this first, I have a whole article about creating an eco-friendly art product in our fall magazine that's really sharing a series of products that you can use from several different companies to really differentiate yourself and go basically eco-friendly all the way, essentially, or sustainable with your art product. Because as I looked at it as a business person, I was like, oh, I smell competitive advantage. And that's actually what I said. Yes, people love to make their product, but art is a highly competitive space, right? There are a lot of people competing for not that many spots. And so if you're an artist to say, why would I actually switch all this up? Part of the thought process can be, by using more sustainable and eco-friendly materials, you position yourself very differently. than kind of the whole rest of the pack, essentially, by moving into sort of that early adopter. And we even did a case study with someone that upcycles vinyl records and paints on them. And so we use the Tomorrow's Artist paints and the other sustainable products as well as part of that, because I just wanted to see, and I wanted her words as well about, how was the experience different? And it's one thing to talk to and interview all of these great companies, and then to actually see it used in practice. So are you seeing from your early markets, knowing that you're still an earlier stage company, are you seeing more muralists, more people doing paintings? What exactly are you seeing from sort of this early interest?
Great question. We're seeing a nice balance of all of them, but for different reasons. And you actually hit on a very important thing here. Um, there are when you're creating art in an environment where you're hoping to get gallery placement, you're working with representation. They've got a pool and a list of collectors that they market your product to, right? Because that's kind of the artist's dream, is to have representation and get hopefully the right representation so that they both make money and one of those things. So there is we're starting to notice a group of collectors that are going, hey, you know what? That artist is doing something different. So I'm watching this
Ah,
layer of collector now lifting the artist that's doing purposeful work. That's
oh.
on the fine art side. The and I have absolute firsthand knowledge of these conversations, because often we'll get engaged in supporting the artist from a conversation with a municipality that's going to use our standard body product on a mural. You'll notice
Mm.
in our feed, we've got a lot of muralists. They'll use our standard body versus our heavy body. That's kind of the delineation. You've got the muralist and casual painter that'll use the standard, and then the fine art canvas and different, knife kind of quality product application will go heavy body. Um, they'll be pitching the mural. There'll be 10 artists that have submitted. They're beautiful, and they'll interview them. And we are finding that the municipalities that are funding these murals are very interested and want to present to the community the benefit of the material and the artist and the choice they made to use our product. We've
Mm.
heard that the muralists feel like when they're using our product, they have an advantage when they're quoting the job, because
Hmm.
the city then has this ability to say, hey, not only are we doing this beautiful mural on a parking, these are large parking structures, things like this in different
Mhm.
markets, sides of condos and, large scale, very, very visible murals. And they're able to say, hey, not only is this beautiful work that the artist is, her creativity is just, it's obvious, amazing work here, but all of that material, 70% of that material came out of the waste stream. So we've now, taken 60 gallons on this project alone out of the waste stream. So it's something they're proud of. And it's
Mhm.
almost like that. And we're hearing it enough from different communities. I think and even corporately from corporate decision makers, that it is absolutely boardroom level conversation. Let's get into real initiatives that we can really validate, that we know are going to make a difference.
Right. Yeah, you can prove it because you can measure exactly how much of it was used, and that's a direct correlation to what came out of the waste stream.
That's right.
And so it's really a no-brainer if a city is using it for murals or other kinds of things. It feels like a no-brainer to say, this is what we did, just as an easy kind of table stakes for cities. So that is interesting. Are you seeing other interesting areas of kind, because the art world is very vast. There's a lot there. What other interesting things are you starting to see pop up in the conversations? Like the city one with muralists, that's very interesting. The fine art collectors, that's very interesting. Are there any other kind of surprise patterns that you've been seeing as they've
There,
gotten started?
yeah, there are. They're very exciting. We're going to learn a lot about this November, because we've been invited to participate in a teachers, essentially an art teacher, a statewide art teachers, show. So they're
Mhm.
all coming in looking at new products and new projects to share in their class. And what we're finding out as we're preparing for these shows is that there's an educator that's teaching the fundamentals of art is now able to add the sustainable consumer conversation into that project with the students. So now you're
Oh.
layering the decision making process as to when you're looking at product, look for these things. Look for the AP approval,
Mhm.
look for this, look for that. And oh, by the way, the added benefit to brands like this, and it's not just us, there's some other legitimate, products out there that are making a real tangible difference. Um, Look for things like that. You're moving into, possibly a career in art or whatever. This is something that really is a benefit. So with all of the gifts you have and that you're building on through all this time you're spending, make decisions that lift the whole mission. And that was something we're really excited about because we know in the name isn't by accident. We looked at the name. We didn't want to offend existing artists by any means, but we do know that the next generation of folks that are really studying, that's where we can impact long term this decision making. It's a consumer decision. How am I going to spend my money and where and what benefit with every dollar have I created? And when there's a problem out there with this waste stream, and it's growing because as the communities grow and there's more architectural paint out there, there's going to be more waste.
Mhm.
We need to create top shelf product that will help mitigate that challenge.
Mhm.
And so
And
that
so
was no
s
surprise to us. Yeah.
Yeah, so starting with the educators, that's an interesting it's true. I mean, even if you go back to, my background is in tech and they always talked about, like I grew up with Apple computers in school and other kinds of things because of various, initiatives and different types of things and those things do carry on, right? The investments in that education at the beginning and helping people understand how this is different and how this is changing and so that the those artists are being educated with a whole new set of things and so existing artists it's for them it's a competitive advantage in the existing market as they're moving in but it will become table stakes at some point for a lot of people
Yeah.
for whole segments of the market and that's kind of I think the intention of starting at that beginning is because it becomes well let me really be conscious in my choices on what I'm making and what I'm using so yeah, it's a interesting time as an artist to really look at this and start using that product because you're do you think it's fair to say you're still in kind of the so I always think of again because my background's tech. I talk about we always talked about the bleeding edge and then we had sort of the little more leading edge or early adopter phase. Are we still kind of at the early adopter phase with the product? Do you think,
I
or are
think
we more mainstream?
no, I think we're absolutely still on the early stage of this. It's more oftentimes than not when I'm talking to folks that are even close to me, they're like that I haven't shared, corporately what we're doing. They're blown away. And our team has been at it for 6 years. Right? So, and I think most things, if you're doing them with intention and with quality first and foremost, you're not compromising quality and you're going to stay true to the mission. It does not happen overnight. We've had to take step after step after step, very purposefully to make sure that we are doing what we say we're going to do.
Hmm.
And the story is pretty amazing. I mean, the consumption of water used in production of virgin material, new material for architectural paint, is between 13 and 15 gallons of water consumed in all of the
Hmm.
processing. So that's, in the material, cleaning and all that stuff. But when we recapture that, that's already done. So see, now all of a sudden we're taking the same equal amount of beautiful material that's going to be applied to an artistic venture, out here. We've now taken all that material that was consumed on the front end and we've put it to work again. And that
Hmm.
to me is special. And I think we have to look at more things like that. And I think we spoke earlier a little bit about Created with Encore being a brand. You'll see it on the Tomorrow's Artist product. You'll
Hmm.
see it on the Deco Earth product. And that is kind of the sustainable engine in these products. And that's really just the tip of the spear because the team that I've developed, and they're fantastic from a communication standpoint, technical standpoint, and chemistry and scale, from scaling some large businesses. We're looking at other streams that we can start now putting under this banner. And but we're very early in this one, even though it's been 6 years in the making. And that you'll
Hmm.
find is not an unusual timeline when product
Hmm.
has the ability to really stick and make a difference. It's not a fly by night kind of a thought. It's a intentional, scalable product. Um,
Hmm.
and
and it's a lot of one step forward, two steps back, right? And there's got to You have to have a lot of resilience for all the things that don't quite work, right?
Yeah.
You're like,
Willing to
oh,
learn. We're all ears here. So we all realize we're going to hear things that maybe we haven't heard before that we can improve on. And we love that. When I started to share the product with the community as far as a thought, kind of a flash of inspiration, I really wanted to hear what they didn't like.
mhm,
In fact, I have one of our greatest advocates now. She's fantastic. She shows LA, New York, and London. She does pretty heavy body type floral work and automotive. And her husband happened to be within earshot the second time I met with her. First time, imagine me just being introduced to her. I didn't really know her that well. I knew I wanted someone at that level to analyze our first round product. So I went in there. I was very nervous, and I give her this palette of material and explain to her what we're looking for. Give her a little survey sheet to kind of fill out. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, I come back and he happened to be in an adjoining office to where she was. And she was really tough, and brutally honest. All the way to, and I loved every bit of it. And we've gone to dinners, obviously now this has been 5 years, right? Something like that, 5.5
mhm,
years. And he always laughs. He goes, "I am so surprised you came back for a third round." Like, wow, I go, "This is how we develop great product." And now,
mhm,
that's absolutely the pattern we've kind of had. We are going to always pay attention and improve because it's a nuanced business and there's lanes of opportunity in there. And if we're not listening, we're not growing. So, you know, we're going to consistently change and evolve as we grow the brand and the business for sure.
mhm. So if somebody wants to find out more about Tomorrow's Artist, like how do they follow you on socials? How do they find out more about your products? What are the best resources for
The,
our listeners?
Our Instagram, simply Tomorrow's Artist, and that's a great channel to kind of get linked into some of the current artists. And what we've done there is we've built a community of about 13,000 artists that are using the product and are advocating for the mission. And you'll see the work that they do. We are promoting artist work in that platform. So when somebody is using our product and they want to send us stuff, we actively promote it and try to get them engaged and that. And to that point, like when we get asked oftentimes to participate in festivals and things like that, as either a sponsor or donating material, our team's first question is, are you paying the artist? If you're going to
Mm.
support the artist and the art community, we'll support you. If it's just a festival for exposure, we think
Yeah.
there's a lot of that. We need you to fund the artist, right? It's a job. They're out there working, they're hustling, and they need to be compensated. So we're careful about how we do all that stuff. But you'll see a lot of that information in the Instagram. And then, of course, there's just a website, which is it's a consumer platform. So you can buy the product right online. It's just tomorrow-artist.com. And that is a URL. And maybe, as you kind of produce this and so forth, just put a link to it in
Mhm,
the presentation. They can link right to it, and that'll get some about us. There's some videos in there about processing and how we do it, so it's kind of informative. And then there's ways to buy it. That will on the consuming or consumer side, where you're acquiring product, that'll match up nicely to Blick, for example. So we're available on their online platform,
mhm,
so you can go right into the Blick platform and buy it there too, and things like that. So there's a lot of information starting to flow around out there in
mhm.
the social channels.
All right. Well, this has been great. I've really enjoyed being able to learn more about the process, talk about the product. I know when we met at NAMTA, I was really curious and interested because I'm a sustainability nerd myself and
I
trying to
love
make
it.
sure there's a planet there for the next generation.
That's right.
So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, everyone that has tuned in and stuck with us to the end. And we'll see you next time on Sustainability and Artisan Craft.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.